You see, there's something truly extraordinary and perhaps a little dangerous about certain people. They walk into a room and instantly they feel everything. The quiet tension between two friends, the sorrow that hides behind a polite smile. Society often calls this a gift, the rare ability to sense what others overlook. But what if it isn't just a gift? What if it's a double-edged sword, the most dangerous awareness you could ever carry? Not a danger that harms the body, but one that shakes the soul. Because once you begin to see too clearly, you lose the comforting blindness that lets most people drift peacefully through life. Watch closely at any gathering. Everyone's playing a quiet, unspoken game. How are you? I'm fine. The script runs smoothly, and both sides agree to never question it. Compliments, laughter, small talk, all part of the choreography of comfort. But then there's you, the one who sees the cracks beneath the surface. You notice the wife who flinches at her husband's tone, the colleague who smiles through loneliness, the quiet unease pulsing through the room like an unseen current. And that's where the real danger begins, when you can no longer unsee the truth that everyone else has agreed to ignore. Because once you start to truly see these hidden layers of life, there's no way to go back. You can't simply unsee what your awareness has revealed, and that's where the real weight of it begins to press on you. The world around you doesn't change, but your vision of it does, and that difference isolates you in ways few can understand. What's even more unsettling is that your very presence becomes a mirror that others can't bear to face. They look into your eyes and feel exposed, as if you can read every truth they've worked so hard to bury. Not because you judge them, but because you see them. And that, to many, feels unbearable. When you perceive too clearly, you quietly disrupt the illusion that holds society together. Think about it, the entire social world is a grand stage play. Everyone is cast in a role, the confident entrepreneur, the devoted mother, the loyal friend, the humble dreamer. The costumes fit perfectly, the dialogue rehearsed for years, and it all works beautifully as long as everyone stays in character. But then there's you, the one who sees through the set walls, the lighting tricks, the acting. You're the person who suddenly stands in the middle of that performance and says, "Wait a minute, none of this is real." And in that moment, the illusion trembles. People don't like that kind of truth, not because they're weak or foolish, but because those illusions are the very fabric that holds their world together. That's where the first danger arrives, isolation. Not the simple kind where you lack company, but a deeper, more haunting solitude, the isolation of consciousness. You begin to live in a parallel reality, one that others can't even see. You speak a language that only echoes back to you. You look around and realize everyone's playing by rules that no longer make sense to you. And the cruel irony, the more clearly you perceive life's truths, the further you drift from those still caught in the performance. I once knew a woman, let's call her Sarah, who carried this extraordinary perception like a burden and a blessing all at once. She could walk into any room and instantly sense who was genuine, who was masking pain, who was quietly drowning in their own silence. It wasn't magic, it was awareness sharpened by compassion. But over time, that awareness began to cost her. Because when you see too deeply, the world grows quieter around you. People withdraw. Smiles fade faster. And suddenly, you're left standing in the middle of a crowded room, surrounded by people, yet profoundly alone. And Sarah, she could see everything. Who was genuine and who was performing, who carried silent pain behind a brave face, who could be trusted and who was quietly concealing their truth. But you know what happened to her? She lost almost everyone close to her. Not because she was harsh, not because she judged, but because people felt seen, and that terrified them. Around her, their masks slipped, their practiced smiles wavered. Her very presence stripped away the comfort of pretending. They told her things like, "You're too much. You overthink everything. You feel too deeply. Can't you just relax?" But how could she? Seeing clearly isn't a talent you can switch off. It's not like closing your eyes to light. It's like asking someone who hears perfectly to suddenly ignore sound. Once awakened, perception never sleeps. It whispers constantly, pointing out the truths, everyone else has agreed to ignore. And that leads to the second danger, the crossroads every truth seer eventually faces. Do you speak, or do you stay silent? Because when you see what's really happening beneath the surface, you carry a truth that demands a voice. But the moment you speak it aloud, you become the target. And I don't mean in a dramatic physical way, but in the quiet psychological sense. People will call you negative, too sensitive, a troublemaker. They'll accuse you of seeing darkness where there is none, of inventing storms in calm skies. They'll say, just let things be, not realizing that for someone like you, silence isn't peace, it's suffocation. But if you choose silence, if you swallow what you see and pretend not to notice, you begin to fracture inside. Because every time you deny your perception, every time you accept a false version of reality just to keep the peace, you betray yourself a little more. You teach your mind not to trust its own truth. You teach your heart that its awareness is wrong. And slowly, quietly, without even realizing it, you begin to disappear behind your own eyes. And over time, this constant suppression of truth begins to split you in two. One part of you still knows, sees, understands what's real, while another part must pretend not to. It's a quiet kind of madness, the kind that eats away at your peace without ever making a sound. I remember once sitting in a meeting where everyone was celebrating the success of a project I knew was on the verge of collapse. The signs were obvious: the strained laughter, the forced optimism, the way everyone carefully avoided the one topic that mattered. You could almost feel the truth vibrating beneath the surface, begging to be acknowledged. So I did the unthinkable. I spoke it. Gently, carefully, I suggested we might need to re-examine a few troubling details. And in that moment, the atmosphere shifted. Faces hardened. Smiles froze. I wasn't met with reasoned debate or thoughtful discussion. I was met with hostility. Not because they wanted to be cruel, but because my words threatened their illusion of control. And that brings us to the third danger, the most subtle, most corrosive one of all. When you see clearly in a world that prefers blindness, people will often turn their discomfort into anger directed not at the problem, but at you. They won't plot against you consciously. It's deeper, more automatic than that. It's the ancient reflex of shooting the messenger. When someone dares to point out that the emperor has no clothes, the crowd doesn't applaud their honesty, they attack them for spoiling the fantasy. And so your clarity becomes a weapon in their eyes, a threat that must be silenced, dismissed, or controlled. I've watched this unfold again and again. The truth seers, the realists, the deeply aware, each of them pushed aside, labeled, and diminished. You're too negative. You're creating drama. You're unstable. You're paranoid. Notice the pattern. Every label serves one purpose: to protect the illusion and punish the awareness that dared to expose it. They all carry the same hidden message that you are the problem, not what you're perceiving. It's a clever defense mechanism, really. If they can make you question your own perception, they never have to face what you've actually seen. But here's the part no one warns you about: the fourth danger, and perhaps the most devastating of all. When you live with an open awareness, constantly tuning in to the emotions, energies, and unspoken truths around you, something quietly begins to happen inside. The boundaries blur. The line between what's yours and what belongs to others starts to fade. You walk into a room feeling light and calm, but by the time you leave, you're heavy with anxiety, sadness, or anger, and you don't even know why. It's as if you've become a sponge, absorbing the emotional residue of every soul you encounter. Imagine trying to hear your own voice in a room full of people all talking at once. Eventually, you forget what your voice even sounds like. That's what this feels like: a slow dissolving of your center, a gradual vanishing of self. I've spoken to people who live in this constant empathy, and they all describe the same haunting truth: I feel like I'm disappearing. Like there's less of me and more of everyone else. This isn't poetic exaggeration, it's a real psychological erosion. When your inner boundaries become too porous, when you keep taking in everything without shielding your essence, you begin to drift away from your own core, losing not only your peace, but the very sense of who you are. Now, you might be thinking this all sounds a little bleak. Is there truly no hope for those who see too clearly? And this is where it gets interesting, because the danger I've been describing isn't born from clarity itself, but from unconscious clarity. It becomes harmful only when you don't understand what's happening to you, when you start to believe that your awareness is madness, that something within you is broken. But once you recognize the truth of it, once you understand that your deep perception is not a flaw, but a rare form of awareness, everything begins to shift. The world doesn't change, but your relationship to what you see does. You start realizing you were never meant to save everyone from their own unconsciousness. You were never tasked with exposing every hidden truth or fixing every unseen wound. Because here's the real danger, not the seeing itself, but the compulsion to act on everything you see. The belief that if you notice a problem, it becomes your job to fix it. If you sense someone's pain, you must heal it. If you detect dysfunction, you must correct it. That's where the exhaustion begins, when you start carrying what was never yours to hold. Think of it like this. You're walking along a riverbank and you notice the water is muddy. You see it clearly, it's obvious to you. Others pass by and don't seem to notice, or perhaps they do and simply don't care. Now you have a choice. You can leap into the river, splashing and stirring, desperately trying to clear the water with your hands, but in doing so, you'll only muddy it further, exhausting yourself in a task that was never yours to complete. Or you can pause, acknowledge what you see, note its condition, and continue walking calm, aware but not consumed, because clarity was never meant to be a burden, it was meant to be a lantern. The point isn't to cleanse the river with your hands, but to learn when to keep your light steady as you walk beside it. The river clears itself when the time is right, not when you panic and stir it. That's the essence of wisdom in clear seeing. True awareness isn't about rushing to fix everything you notice. It's about knowing when to simply witness. The irony is, when you finally stop trying to repair everything around you, your vision sharpens even more. Suddenly the noise quiets. You start seeing life, people, and emotions as they are, not as problems demanding solution. And here's the magic: people feel it. They feel safer around you, lighter even, because you're no longer silently asking them to change or wake up just to make you feel at peace. You've become that rare presence, someone who can see deeply, without judgment, without force. Imagine being with a person who recognizes your pain, your fears, your chaos, and still allows you to just be. No rescue mission, no pressure, just understanding. That feeling, that's freedom. That's what true clarity offers, not control, but calm. Not interference, but space. When you master this, your awareness turns from a burden into a gift. You stop using it like a weapon to expose others' blindness, and instead it becomes light, steady, soft, and freeing. You still care. You still feel compassion, but you finally understand the difference between caring and carrying, between seeing clearly and taking responsibility for what's not yours. That's where real peace begins. River after a storm, letting the water clear on its own. Because when you give yourself that quiet, that space where no one's energy is pulling at you, something beautiful happens, your perception refined. You start to see that not everything needs your reaction. Not every truth must be spoken. Not every blind spot needs to be exposed. You begin to understand that awareness without peace is just another form of chaos. The real strength of clear seeing doesn't come from speaking louder or knowing more, it comes from stillness. From having the discipline to see the madness of the world and still remain centered. The people who master this don't burn out trying to awaken others. They stand like calm mountains, aware, observant, but untouched by the storms around them. And that's the paradox. The more time you spend in genuine solitude, the more connected you actually become. Because solitude isn't isolation, it's alignment. It's where you recharge your perception, where your empathy becomes cleaner, quieter, more grounded. You stop taking on everyone's pain as if it were your duty to fix them. You start realizing that your clarity is meant to illuminate, not to interfere. This is the path of those who see deeply and still stay sane. They don't drown in the depth of their vision, they learn to float in it. They don't run from the world, they move through it like water, clear, present, and free. Grace to let life unfold without forcing its rhythm. Because that's the essence of true awareness, not to control what you see, but to coexist with it. The wisest souls understand this. Insight is not a weapon, it's a responsibility. You're not meant to use your perception to push others into clarity they're not ready for. You're meant to hold the light steady, so when they're ready to open their eyes, they'll find their way naturally. You see, every truth ripens in its own time. Just like fruit on a tree, it cannot be pulled before it's ready or it turns bitter. So your task is not to rush the process, but to stay rooted while the world around you learns and changes. When you can see clearly without interference, when you can feel deeply without drowning in what you feel, you've reached a rare kind of peace. That's when your awareness becomes medicine, not burden. You stop reacting and start radiating. You become the calm presence that helps others steady themselves, not because you told them to, but because you show them how peace looks. So yes, the danger of seeing what others don't is real, but so is the beauty of it if you learn to carry your vision with patience, wisdom, and restraint. Because in the end, clear seeing isn't meant to isolate you from the world, it's meant to awaken you to it. And when that awakening is gentle, it doesn't just save you, it quietly transforms everyone around you. And that, right there, is where clarity turns from a weight into wisdom. Because when you finally learn to carry your awareness gently, without trying to shrink it, without apologizing for it, you discover something rare, peace within perception. You begin to realize that true strength isn't about closing your eyes to protect yourself, but about keeping them open without letting the world blind you. And yes, you'll still feel the loneliness that comes with seeing what others don't. But that loneliness softens the moment you meet someone else who sees too. Those rare souls who notice the same cracks in the illusion, who sense the same quiet truths. Around them, you don't need to dim your light just to make others comfortable. You can finally exhale, fully seen, fully known. Together you form a small constellation of awareness in a sky mostly asleep, steady, patient, glowing quietly. That's the beauty hidden inside the danger, the realization that you're not broken, not strange, not too much, just awake. And awakening, when handled with grace, doesn't isolate you. It connects you deeply and silently to others walking the same path. So yes, the danger of clear seeing is real, but so is the possibility, the chance to live consciously without collapsing under the weight of what you know. To see deeply without drowning in it. To hold your awareness not as a burden, but as a gift that lights the path for others softly, without demand. That, my friends, is the quiet mastery of awareness, the art of living with eyes wide open in a world that still dreams.